hope you brought your appetite today. Welcome to Table for Two. We have another great summer lunch cooking up at the Tower Bar.
Oh my God, I'm having lunch with Jon Hamm today.
It's too long coming.
I couldn't be more excited for today's interview. Not only is our guest one of the most talented and handsome men in Hollywood, he's also one of the most down-to-earth, easygoing, charming people around. He's an actor you almost can't help having an affinity for, which might explain his success across the board. From television to film, comedy to drama, and everywhere in between. America fell in love with him on Mad Men, and he hasn't stopped pumping out hits since. From The Town to last year's blockbuster Top Gun Maverick. Oh, you know what? Let's order some lunch.
Let's do it. All you all about.
I think I'm gonna just do my typical...
Let's just both order like giant ribeyes.
So sit back, grab a glass of rosé, and maybe a bite to eat, because today we're having lunch with Jon Hamm. I'm Bruce Bozzi, and this is my podcast, Table for Two.
First of all, this is super exciting for me to sit and have lunch with you alone. I've seen you. We recently had dinner at friends of ours' house, and it was great.
We always see each other, except for the time we flew on a plane together,
Yep.
but we always see each other in groups.
In groups. Jon and I ran into each other on an American Airlines flight, and then we ran into each other.
Saying enough, we might get, freaking flying around.
Oh my God, could we get tickets, please? And then we had dinner. No, we were having dinner at tables near each other in New York before SNL.
Yeah.
You're more LA.
More LA, for sure.
But, you
We just
divide.
bought a place in New York. I very much enjoy being able to go to New York for reasons exactly like that.
Right. I think having
Both ends of it.
you and Andy are both from St. Louis.
Andy Cohen.
My best buddy. In St. Louis, I didn't know much about anything Midwest. I was a New York guy. I drove to pick up Andy's mom's car
Yeah.
when she said, you can have my car. So we flew and we drove back. And I went there and there were all these, the neighbors brought cookies over. And I was like, wow, this is really, and you and Andy are like.
We're hometown guys.
You're
for
hometown
sure.
guys. What do you think it is about where you grew up?
I think you nailed it on the head. Like it's a neighborhood, and Andy's neighborhood. I grew up kind of in a different part of town in St. Louis, and it won't mean anything to anybody that's not from St. Louis, but St. Louis is very parochial.
Yeah.
So where you're from and where you grew up is like
Clayton,
really establishes
Ladue,
where what your kind of connections were in neighborhoods,
Right.
and there's a lot of signifiers for us St. Louisans. But I ended up going to a private high school that became my community.
Okay.
Where I met the majority of my friends, and,
Right.
and that was very close to where Andy grew up in Clayton. They were next door, Ladue, which is his next door community, but they're very similar in their makeup from a religious standpoint, from a economic standpoint, from a racial standpoint, everything.
Right.
So we have a lot of in fact, we had dinner a couple weeks ago in New York City, and we for the first 25 minutes, we were both apologizing to my fiance because we were just like, none of this means anything to you, but we have to get through it for 20 minutes, and then I promise we'll shut up.
Right.
And it was really funny, but it's true. That's the real thing, and you don't have it so much here in LA.
No, you don't have it at all.
You have a different version of it because if your kids go to the certain school, then you're the school kind of community, but that's
very different.
Loaded with all the other stuff that goes with it. But
Yeah.
in St. Louis, it was more about who you knew, and the community was where you ran around and played, and the parents all kind of looked out for all the other kids.
Right.
And that kind of led to the things you were saying of like, oh, your friend's coming to drive your car, let me bake him some cookies.
Right.
Of course, why wouldn't you?
You also, growing up in St. Louis, one of the things that you've talked about a lot is you were like a Renaissance man. You did it all, and you were talented at it all. What was difficult? When I was thinking about you, I was like, did you ever have your heart broken in?
Oh yeah, for sure. Everybody has a version of whatever pain they go through in life, and I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I grew up with very little money. In fact, I was raised until I was 10 years old by my mom, as a single mom, because she got divorced when I was a little kid. And then she died when I was 10, and so then had to go live with my dad, who was a great guy, but didn't have the capacity to kind of raise a kid. So then I was sort of raised by the community.
Right.
And that was the school that I went to. So there was a lot of kind of whatever emotions and experiences to unpack from just that over the course of a lifetime. Being raised by a single mom and being an only child. I have two half sisters, but they were out of the picture when I was being raised by my mom. The world was opportunity, so it was like, go find a book, go to the library.
Right.
So I would go to the library and I'd go check out LPs of comedy things, and I would go get Cheech and Chong, and I would go get Bob Newhart, and I would go get Richard Pryor, and these were like wildly inappropriate, most of them, for a 7-year-old, 8-year-old.
Right.
But it was something to do.
Right.
And my mom it was free. Those are the other things. So it was like I was dependent upon the community, whether it was Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, whether it was community athletics. You only had to pay $9, and I could play soccer for a season, and that included your uniform and all the other stuff that made you feel like you were good. And the coach was some divorced dad who didn't have anything else to do, and you weren't exactly training to be a professional soccer player, but it was something to do. So those were the kinds of things that I gravitated toward. And then my mom would put me in art classes, and she'd put me in acting classes because she knew it was something to do, that I would have fun with it, that I could meet other kids, and that I would be, and that she could then go to work. She had to work, from 9 to 5 every day. She was a secretary.
Yeah.
And so that was again, and that's the idea of like in loco parentis, like I was taken care of by the community, which is why when I talk about how much of a hometown kid I am, it's why I give back.
I didn't know that, Jon. I didn't know that you lost your parents young, and the profound effect that it has on anybody. But you also did something, I think, that there's a strength that, you coming to LA with $150 in your pocket, it feels like you had a self-reliance that must come from experiencing such profound loss.
I talk to my therapist about this a lot. She tries to put some of this stuff into a context, which is helpful. But it's like, there's a way to look at it like, okay, the bad thing has happened.
Right.
You're still here.
Yeah.
So the bad thing happened, and you're still here, and you're still doing something. And you have the motor still running.
Yeah.
So what could happen? You go to LA and another bad thing happens. Well, you dust yourself off and you'll keep walking.
Right.
For me, the real challenge of Los Angeles was just scale. I remember driving into Los Angeles and being like, I'm here. And in reality, I was about 30 miles out of LA because that was where like San Bernardino started or whatever, but it looked like LA. And I was like, when do I get to Hollywood? Where's Hollywood? What's Hollywood?
Exactly.
And I'm just driving on the 10.
Yeah.
Eventually, and like an hour later, I'm like, what the fuck is this place? I gotta be on there. Of course, this is a time before GPS or anything, so I'm looking on a map.
You had that
the giant phone book.
Yeah.
But it was scale, and then it was how do I find a way into this monstrous puzzle that everybody seems to know the secret doors and the passages and everything.
How did you do that?
One day at a time, man. It was literally like when you get that book, which for people that don't know what we're talking about, there used to be a phone book size map of Los Angeles.
What was the name of that book?
Called the Thomas Guide.
Thomas Guide. We all had the Thomas
You
Guide.
had it in your car, and it was your go-to. Where the fuck am I? How do I find my way from Burbank to Century City?
Right.
And it was what it was.
Yeah.
Things took a little longer.
Right.
But you look at this book, and I'm not kidding, it was the size of a phone book, this. And you think, I'm never gonna, how am I gonna, what, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But like anything else, you realize, okay, you break it down into smaller and smaller, digestible kind of pieces and chunks. You go, okay, well, I see, this is West Hollywood, this is where most of those things are. And then this is the Valley, and that's where most of those
And
things
how did you know where to go, though? So Jon's story is, you go back to the high school that you went to, and you were working there, and you were like the number 2 to your drama teacher, and then you're like, okay, what then propels Jon to say, I'm doing it. I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to try to
I had
make
always
this.
planned on doing it after college. And I went to school and got a theater scholarship and did acting in college and everything. And it was kind of the one thing that I kept coming back to because people kept saying, hey, you're not bad at this. You should try it. You're
Right.
good at this.
Right.
And if somebody keeps telling you you're good at something, eventually it sticks. And you're like,
Right.
I guess I'm good at this.
Right.
I got a scholarship to do it.
Right.
And then sort of my generation of actors from my school, again, you're in the Midwest, so there's not a lot of, jobs for actors.
Sure.
So you're either going to go to Chicago, which was the closest place,
Right.
New York, or LA.
Uh-huh.
And most of my group went to Chicago. Some came to LA. Really nobody went to New York, but I had a bunch of friends in New York. I was like, think about it. Like, do I want to go to New York? Do I really want to focus on theater? Do I want to live in New York? It was so expensive back then. Because I knew what my friends were paying for rent and how much money they were making and how much it was. And this is, again, in the 90s. I was like, I had a family in LA. I've got a couple friends in LA. Maybe I'll just go to LA.
Okay.
But I had no money. So that was the plan was then, okay, what do I do for money?
$150 is no money.
Well, and that was when I graduated college in 1993. I moved back to St. Louis, and I was like, I need to get a job. I lived in my college roommate's family's house in their basement, so I had nowhere to live. Mm-hmm. Until I got a job, and I finally got a job waiting tables, and I started earning enough money that I could get an apartment. I got an apartment with a kid I went to high school with, and we shared a place for like a year. And then during this time, I had talked to my high school and said, would it be possible for me to come teach at the incredible annual, salary of something ridiculously cheap. So I was like,
Sure.
wow, okay, that'll be great. And then I can save that money, and then I can go to LA. Which, of course, I saved none of the money. And then at the end of it, I got a $100 check from my grandfather and had another $50.
Oh, where'd the money go?
24-year-old
Right.
and whatever. It went to the
Life.
yeah. But it was one of those things, and I knew it would be They asked me if I wanted to stay for another year because I really did enjoy it, and they enjoyed having me, and the kids liked me, and I was like, I could see me doing this for the rest of my life, and I think I would be happy, but I don't think I would be fulfilled because there would always be the 0.1% that was like, well, what if you tried? You never tried. And I was like, I gotta try.
Yeah.
And that was when I was like, I'm 24, turning 25. I'll give myself 5 years. It's essentially a presidential administration.
I do think that's the number.
And I said, if I'm not doing this by 30 in a way that I'm sustainable,
Sure.
then the market has spoken. And
Okay.
it's time for me to pursue other alternatives. Because I just knew, I'd worked at that point in enough restaurants that I knew the guy that worked in the restaurant that was, you could tell was the guy 8 years ago.
Yep.
And just never got out of the circle.
That's such an important awareness that you had, that you were able to look at that and see that. A lot of young people can't see that. And to see that heartbreak in somebody or like that sort of defeat that happens and...
Well, it's super easy in LA because the normal markers of time don't exist here.
They don't.
So you're like, how many times have you done this? I was like, oh, was that like 2 years ago? And they're like, that was 2010. And you're like, what?
Sure.
That was 13 years ago?
It's crazy.
I've done that so many times recently where you're like, oh my God, it was a couple years ago. And of course we had the weird pandemic loss of 2 years that just went by in a weird blur. But I will say that without having the markers of traditional seasons, you don't have the sense of time passing as much.
When I moved out here in my early 20s, didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was roughly 23. And at 27, I said, you have to leave because this city's asking very little of you, and you're not motivated enough to give it back. And it was just, time was very elusive because summer was winter, was spring, was fall, and you're right.
It's 72 degrees and sunny every day. I got really good at golf when I moved out here because there was a public golf course. It was $9 to play. And I went with all my broke roommates and we played golf every day. I was like, damn, I got a good tan.
Welcome back to Table for Two. Jon has been telling us about his complicated childhood and making the move to Hollywood. It wasn't easy from the get-go, which begs the question, what kept Jon in the room?
What was the thing that you said, okay, I'm in?
So to get back to like my promise to myself, right?
Yeah.
I said by 30.
Right.
I guess when I turned, so this would have been around 1999, so I'd have been 28.
Okay.
And I booked my first job. I finally got a job. I'd been dropped by William Morris by this point.
Oh, really?
I had signed with another small agency, and I just like, all right, now I gotta get back. Either get back on the bike or pack it up. So I'm like, I'll give it one more shot. Maybe the agency was too big. I got lost. I didn't have anybody fighting for me. So I tried this other small agency, Judy Shane and Associates. I don't know if you remember Judy Shane. She was kind of an old. She came out of Freddie Field's office, like Tony Howard, like all these ladies.
Yeah.
And
Tony Howard. These are like
big deals.
Yeah.
So she started her own place, and she was very small, and these two old ladies that ran it, her and Ginny Raymond. And I was like, all right, this feels a little more comfortable. I got this feminine energy, these older ladies, it's a little more in my wheelhouse. I can talk to, they can tell me what's up in a gentle way, and say, why am I not, what's not connecting?
Yeah.
And it worked. So I got this job. It was on a TV show. It was for a top of show, guest star, network show. And I think I got paid like 10 grand. And I was like, that was more money than I made all of last year.
10 grand, right.
And it worked one day. It was like
Right.
an 18-hour day, so I also got like overtime and all this other stuff. And it was a part. It was like a real part. I got to play opposite Paula Kael, who was the lead of the show, or the second lead of the show. Melina Kanakarides was the lead of the show. It was called Providence. And Friday night on NBC, family show,
Right.
about as soft as, day-old oatmeal. It was just literally like, okay, this is fine. There's a place for this too. And it was fun. And I had a great, Melanie Mayron directed it. I'll never forget it. I used to watch on 30-something. I still see her
she's
nowadays.
great.
I'm like, you were the nicest person to me. She's like, oh, that means so much. But anyways, that was my first job. And then I got another job. I had 3 lines on the Hughleys, D.L. Hughley's show, sitcom back then. And then I got a pilot. It was a comedy that it never went, but then they recast it, and I got to do it again with the new person that they cast. And then it went, but they didn't have any room for me on it, so I wasn't fired, but I just wasn't used. But I got 3 more paychecks for it.
Sure.
I was like, all right, I'm doing this. Then Providence called, and they said, hey, we loved your character so much, and our lead is pregnant, and we got to kind of shoot around her now, so we're going to bump your storyline up to the thing, we're going to bring you back as the love interest. And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, we want you for 13 more episodes. And again, I was like, 13 times 10 is, if I'm correct, it's $130,000, which I have not made in my life up to this point.
Right.
And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then that was kind of, they're like, no, you're in.
That was the game
I was
changer.
like, oh, wow. And then 2000 came around, and I booked a movie. And I had about 3 lines in the movie. It was a feature film, Paramount. Mel Gibson was the star, Greg Kinnear, Sam Elliott, Barry Pepper, all these young guys. I was in the kind of younger tier underneath these guys. And my agent was like, I don't know, it's only a couple lines in this movie. I was like, you know what? But if you read the script, I'm like around all the time. Just let me. I think I'm gonna be in this movie more than you think. And they wanted me to start basic training. It was a war movie, Vietnam War movie, basic training. And I was like, I'm gonna be around these guys. I just want to be around, And I got paid. I got paid every day. And I turned 30 on that movie.
Wow.
Down in Atlanta, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, and I was like, I quit my waiting tables job because I was on this movie for 6 months.
Sure.
And I was getting paid, and I had all the money from the previous gig.
Right.
I was like, I think I can. I paid off all my student loans. I paid off all my credit cards, my back rent, everything that I owed.
Right.
Got an apartment. Got a car that worked for the first time in my life.
I mean, Jon, this is like.
And so I was like, okay, 30. It was 5 years. It took me every bit of 4.5. But
I love you telling this story, and I hope that people listening to this story really understand, because it's very easy to look at you and look at the career you have and to see the Jon Hamm now and not know that and be like, oh.
Well, I was the classic example of the 10-year overnight success. Too.
Sure. It's a heartwarming story to me, too, because, again, not only do you have the village that's helped you, not only have you had the profound loss in your life of the two of the most significant relationships that we have, you have the strength of yourself and the wherewithal to be in it, and the goodness. There's so much goodness that comes off of you, Jon, just so you know. There is so much
Well, I also,
warmth.
When in my dotage at this point, whenever anybody from my hometown or from my high school or Mizzou or wherever comes out here, I generally get a call from somebody who's like, hey, can you sit down with this kid for an hour, have a cup of coffee, tell them what's what. And I'm always like, there's no rule book.
Right.
And the rules of the game, even if there was, have changed so much since I was out here. Not only from not having to look at an analog map to figure out where you're going, but just again the social media aspect and the idea of having
it's a different game.
What is your
It's a different playing
footprint?
field.
Exactly. And I have no
100%.
concept of that.
Don Draper is an iconic character. You brought to life an iconic character that will live on forever. And you captured a very specific moment in time. If you had to sort of say, like, with Don Draper, what did you relate to with Draper, and was there anything about him that you detested?
You know what? It's hard to play a character like that and with any kind of judgment, because then you're removing yourself from it, looking at it from a different perspective. I can do that now, and I can look at a lot of stuff down and go, oof.
Right.
There were some behaviors that really were, but I can also look at it and look at it with understanding. And I think that's people used to say, like, Don, boy, he's such a rough character. This, that. I go, you know what? He's misunderstood. And you can always look at, with the exception of people that are truly, truly evil, and I don't think Don is evil. There's motivation and explanation for a lot of their behavior. Don's a very broken person, and he's got have a lot of compassion for that. He wasn't dealt a great hand to start with, and he's played that into a pretty great position. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of collateral damage from his narcissism, selfishness, however he is needed to feel like he has had to motivate and navigate his life with the tools that he has. So I do think for Don, the fact that he comes to a place of understanding and acceptance and peace at the end of the story that we told, which was very much Matthew's objective for that, and it was on purpose. We've talked about the last 6 or 7 episodes when Don leaves New York and kind of goes on this quest. It's like Siddhartha, right? He just removes all of the things, he gives everything away, and at the end he has a J.C. Penney's bag, and that's it. And he ends up on the end of the earth. He can't run away any further, and he's stuck with himself. And then he has to kind of understand, like, what is it? What are you? And it comes to him that this is what he is. He's a guy who comes up with slogans, and he's an ad guy. Comes up with the thing, goes back, lives his life. Who knows how he dies, but he does die, and eventually we all do. Right. So I do think that there was a lot for me to grasp onto, and it was as a character and as a role and as an opportunity, there was so much to play, and there was so much to show what I could do. That obviously, yes, that did for these larger entities, studios and movie makers and directors and people, to say, like, oh, maybe I could use that guy in some way. And, if Johnny Depp and Brad Pitt and Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and everybody else is busy, maybe we can get to that guy. But obviously, I remember Matt Damon coming up to me very early on in the role, and he goes we were at the SAG Awards or something, and of course he's going to win for whatever he's going to win for. And I've worked with him on a couple occasions. He's a great guy. Yeah. But he came up to me. He's like, "Hey man, it's nice to meet you." And I just wanted to shake the hand of the guy who I'm going to lose parts to eventually. And I was like, But it was a very funny kind of understanding of where we all are in the firmament and rising and falling. And it is like a lot of things. It's like it's a marketplace. Yeah. and you are what you are that day, and tomorrow could be different, and there's a healthy bit of understanding of that too.
Thanks for tuning back into Table for Two. Jon is probably best known for his role as Don Draper on Mad Men, a character he played for close to a decade. I want to know not only what it was like to play such an iconic role, but how he kept from getting typecast.
When did people start to realize, oh my God, this guy's fucking hysterical?
There was just two versions of that, because, part of it is when you see somebody in a role or you see somebody on screen, you assume, okay, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Just listening to a podcast about Tom Cruise, who I've got the good fortune to work with, Top Gun. And Tom, when you look at his stuff he does, is a very serious, very intense kind of guy. And then you look at him in Tropic Thunder and you're like, oh my God, this guy's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And when you know him, when you actually spend time with him and sit down with him, you know that he's engaging and he's funny, and because of course he is. He's an entertainer. He gets it. Yeah. And I think that just takes the kind of time and experience where you get to meet somebody and spend time with them. Yeah. And, as soon as Mad Men hit, I was given all these projects. Oh, do you want to play this guy? Do you want to play this guy? Do you want to play this guy? No versions of Don, right? The smoking cigarettes, noir, dark, dour, brooding kind of, And I was like, that's what I do 9 months out of the year. I do that for my day job. Like, I don't want to do that. It's like, that's not what I got in this business to do. So I was able to, and then I was, adopted, very fortunately, by the comedy community, who I had quite a few friends that had a solid residence in, and one of them was Lorne Michaels, and the other one was Tina Fey. So I hosted the show, and then the Wednesday of the read-through of my first hosting job, as Tina tells it, she called Lorne and said, is this guy funny or is he a dud? And Lorne goes, no, he's funny. And by the time I got to my dressing room on Thursday, the phone rang in my dressing room. It was Robert Carlock. He said, hey, do you want to come on the show? We got an idea for, I was like, 30 Rock? Yeah. It's my favorite show. Kidding me?
No. And your timing is fantastic. It's
It's intimidating, though, to go into a show like 30 Rock, especially when you have a real, and SNL, a real appreciation and understanding and love of it. Because you don't want to be the guy who sucks.
Right.
You don't want to be the guy that fucks it up.
Right.
And I definitely had a lot of anxiety about that. And I look back at the first couple of episodes that I did on both of those, and I was like, I don't think I hit it out of the park.
Sure.
But it was good enough.
On the topic of work, so, you have the 5th season of Fargo.
Yeah.
Which might drop
Fall.
You have John Slatter, I love John, and his wife, Maggie Moore.
Maggie Moore's
Moore's.
That's going to debut at Tribeca, so in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And then we'll be on a screen, some sort of screen near you.
And you have season 3 of The Morning Show, which I got to say, I happen to be, I love Jennifer and Reese a lot as friends. That's kind of an interesting, great sort of thing to bop into.
It was a really, again, fortunate alignment of not only schedules and timing and history and everything, because I've known Jen for quite a few years. Yeah. And
there's nobody better than that lady.
She's the best of the best. She's a person who has lived an incredible life and has an incredible understanding of her fortune and her talent and all the other stuff, and still does great work. And I remember I sent her an email or something after I watched the first season of The Morning Show. And I was like, you didn't have to do this, but I'm really glad you did. And it was really, it was a side of you that I hadn't seen in a long time, and it was really nice to see.
I agree.
And so it was really great to get this opportunity to play out, because my character plays pretty much exclusively opposite Jen's. He's in the Morning Show world and the swirl. It's not, I don't exclusively work with her, but it's mostly with Jen.
Right.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was a fun job. it was a lot of work,
Yeah.
and I was shooting both of those shows concurrently. So I was in Calgary shooting Fargo,
Really?
and then I fly back and be in LA for a couple weeks. Then I fly back to Calgary, and then I fly back to. So it wasn't easy. But every time I think about, man, I'm tired, or man, this sucks, or whatever, I go, you know what sucks? The phone doesn't ring.
Yeah.
That's what sucks.
That's
You can't
what
pay your
sucks.
bills. That's what sucks.
You were part of something that was, I think, pretty monumental last summer,
Yeah.
which was Maverick, which was bringing the big movie with the big movie star
Yeah.
back into the screen and getting people back into the theaters.
Yeah. I just watched it last night for Memorial Day. We were like, sent a text out to the group. I was like, still good.
Right?
It's still good. The movie's still good.
Yeah, it's still good. You guys all were so amazing. And you talked about Tom earlier, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times, and I don't know him. I can only imagine the takeaways from working with someone like Cruz. Was there something, if you had to sort of say one or two things as an actor, as someone in the business that you...
There's two ways to look at it, because I think he has both sides of this to the nth degree, because he's been an actor since he was a teenager.
Right.
And he's been a pretty famous actor since he was almost a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, his first job was Taps, and I think he was 17.
Yeah. Which is an amazing movie.
That's an
If you haven't
amazing
seen
film,
it,
and it's, they look at the cast of that movie, and then you look at the rest of his film career when he was really young, until he really blew up, which was basically Risky Business,
Yep.
and then Top Gun. And you go, oh wow, like this guy's been doing it at that level for that long as an actor. And then you look at him as a producer and what he's been doing, from the Mission films through now Top Gun Maverick to the other 3 franchises that he has, the Jack Reachers, and you go, wow, this guy's really smart about keeping ownership and control over what he can in the wildly uncontrollable business that we live in. And so that's why it took 35 years to make a Top Gun sequel. He didn't want to do it if it wasn't right. And so working with him on this and watching how he really took care of this thing, this baby bird, this billion-dollar baby bird, right? That he could have just let go during the pandemic on a streaming platform, and people would have been like, yeah, thanks, it's something to watch. It would have been The Last Dance. We all would have watched it. But he was adamant that, no, it has to be seen in a movie theater. It's an experience.
Yeah.
It's not something to be watched. And I just watched it on my couch. It was great on my couch.
Right.
But it was really great in the movie theater. When you had a whole group of people, and I was telling my fiance and her sister who were over, and her best friend, and I was like, oh my God, when this played in the theater, it got the biggest cheer. People stood up and cheered.
It's crazy
And
to see
it really
at
was
Cummins.
that common experience.
Yeah.
And shared experience of what the movies are all about. And he was very protective of that. And he's the first guy on set, he's the last guy to leave. He's smart, he's kind. You realize I've certainly had my experience with the leader, the number one on the call sheet, who hasn't been those things. And I've been number one on the call sheet, and I've tried to be those things. And we all have bad days, and not, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But he is very cognizant of being the leader.
Yeah.
And he takes it very seriously, and he's really good at it.
That, I think, is an incredible takeaway from someone who's, no matter what business you're in,
Right.
is how to treat people.
We've heard a lot about Jon's career and professional life today. But before we go, let's get personal and talk wedding bells.
How does that feel going into this is the next blockbuster?
Yeah.
The Jon Hamm blockbuster 2023 is going to the chapel.
It's exciting. It's exciting. It's exciting because it's all potential. It's all possibility, and it's all positive. I suppose there's 2 ways to look at anything like that, which is oh, what if it's terrible? But the other way is this is meant to be something wonderful. And so if you lean into that aspect of it, which I have been, and it's the reason why I really wanted to do it and really leaned into it, it's this is the thing that leads to the next thing of life. And that's
And
what I
it's
hope
the
it will
journey.
be. And it's the journey, and it's exciting, and all of the, I mean, as you well know, all of the minutia of planning it and dealing with it can be mind-numbing and
Sure.
and all of the other things. But then you understand, and I think it only happened to me like maybe a week ago or so, where this sort of calm settled over me. I was like, oh, right, there's none of this matters. Like, yeah, it's great if the thing has a little doodle on it that has a nice design, and that, but like, at the end of the day, the important thing is like, and I literally had this sort of weird epiphany when I was walking the dog. I was like, oh, right, I'm going to look out and I'm going to see this whole group of people, and it's not a very big group of people. It's well under 100 people, but a group of people that are all there because they're supporting me and Anna.
Right.
And that's great. I think the last time that happened to me was like high school graduation. I don't know,
Wow.
like, you know, something like that, you know. I mean, yeah, it was nice to win an Emmy and look out and people are applauding, but half of them are like, are we done yet? Can we go? Is it time to, you know, then they're certainly not all rooting for you. At least there's 5 other guys that certainly weren't.
Right.
And I've been on the other side of that equation quite a few times. But this is not that. And this is the exciting part of life. And it's a signpost and a signifier of the next chapter and phase. And ideally, it gives you and your partner a sense of stability and comfort.
Sure.
And,
yes.
and an identifying capacity that is better, deeper, richer than it's my girlfriend or my boyfriend or what have you.
And I think a shared life is a very meaningful life.
For sure.
And I think that the life you created, that you made happen because no one gave you anything on a platter, is such a wonderful thing to see you embrace, and whether it leads to having a family, creating a family, all the things
TBD.
that just, right, TBD, you don't know. That's the beauty of it. And
TBD.
all you know is about what we have is today.
Yeah.
I wish you a lot of congratulations.
Thank you.
And a lot of good fortune. I look forward to getting to get to know her better.
Yeah. Well, you will.
You are truly a Renaissance man. It's always a pleasure to see you. Love that we broke bread.
Absolutely. My
This
pleasure.
is, I think, if you've pulled up a chair today and you had lunch with Jon Hamm, you are a very lucky person on the other end of this microphone.
At the record show, I finished my salad. Bruce did not.
I mean, not that I will.
I kept talking. I'm saying I was able to talk. I don't know if I was talking with my mouth full or not, but
Thank you for joining me for lunch today, Jon.
Thanks, buddy.
I love it.
Table for Two with Bruce Bozzi is produced by iHeartRadio, 737 Park, and Airmail. Our executive producers are Bruce Bozzi and Nathan King. Table for Two is researched and written by Bridget Arsenault. Our sound engineers are Paul Bowman and Alyssa Midcalf. Table for Two's LA production team is Danielle Romo and Lorraine Virez. Our music supervisor is Randall Poster. Our talent booking is by Jane Sarkin. Special thanks to Amy Sugarman, Uni Scher, Kevin Uvain, Bobby Bauer, Allison Cantor-Graber, Barbara and Jen and Jeff Klein and the staff at the Tower Bar in the world-famous Sunset Tower Hotel. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.